Shus Rabbi Eliyahu, Chacham Eliyahu is about to come. Chashav Rabbanim, all of the great Rabbanim from the town that are here tonight. V'kol HaKahal HaKadosh Hazeh, and all of the holy Jews that have assembled here this evening for the HILULA, the MARAN, Rabbi YOSEF, Zeichet Tzadik Livracha. A HILULA is not a time to mourn. It's not a time to go back 10 years, 11 years and cry on the floor over the great avadon, over the great loss that we have had. A HILULA is a time to get chizuk. A HILULA is a time to celebrate the Torah and all the mitzvot and all of the inspiration that MARAN Torah, Rabbi OVADIA gave to Klal Yisrael. HILULA is a time for all of us to be together tonight, to walk out of here inspired by the life of a man who dedicated himself to one thing and one thing only. And that was Kavod Shemayim, that the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu should reign supreme in this world. As Rabbi Eliyahu just mentioned about the great Avraham Avinu, the Rambam tells us that when Avraham Avinu was 3 years old, he began wondering, who is the creator of this world? And he was meshatet b'daito, he was thinking all day long, who is the creator of this world? Look how perfect the sun rises every morning. Look how wet and moist the water is. Look how the birds are equipped with wings that they can fly. The animals can run wild in the jungle. Look at a human being, how perfect that they are made in every single way. And he wondered, who is the creator of this world? And the Rambam tells us that for the next 37 years of his life, Avraham Avinu was seeking and searching until he found the Ribono Shel Olam. And when he reached that place in his life where HaKadosh Baruch Hu was clear to him and appeared to him, he went out as a man on a mission to teach the world who is the creator of the universe, who is the one that is running our lives, who is the one that is watching over every little action and deed that we do. It's all Hashem. And he had a thirst because he loved the Ribono Shel Olam. He loved HaKadosh Baruch Hu more than anything you could imagine. And so he went on a mission to teach over to the entire universe, there's one God and only one. He created the world, He is running the world, and He is watching the world, and He's involved in your life. And because that He loved Hashem, and He loved mankind, that we should get the greatest benefit of knowing who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, He was unstoppable. The rest of His life was going around being mekarev, bringing people close to Ya'adut, to the belief and the knowledge of one and only one God. And the Rambam writes, he went and he gathered all the nations together. From one city to the other, from one town to the next. Everyone gathered around him. They asked him what he was talking about. He answered each and every one. He answered every single person that he spoke to exactly the way they needed to hear it, till he returned them to the path of truth. MARAN Zeichet Tzadik Livracha, Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF, was from the Ga'onim Shebega'onim. He was the biggest genius of the generation. There was an encyclopedia of Torah in his mind, on his fingertips. Hours and hours and hours and hours every day he sat and he learned and he wrote and he learned and he wrote and he answered questions from every single Jew throughout the spectrum. In all of the genius of Torah, Rabbi Ovadia Zatzal was a genius in Ahavas Yisrael and how he loved every single Jew. His life was dedicated to Klal Yisrael. His life was dedicated to make sure that every Jew that he would come in contact with, and the millions that he spoke to in the great stadiums, would come in contact with the Creator of the universe. Because as much as he loved Hashem, he loved every single Jew. There is a beautiful, beautiful story which is told of the great tzaddik, Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. He once was in the midst of his learning and he got a heart attack. So immediately his son, Rabbi Dovid, who was the closest, it seems, of all the children to him, immediately they call out Salah. They rush him off to the hospital, and in the hospital they begin doing many exams and tests, and they realize he had a very serious heart attack. And they told him, MARAN, we have to do what's called angioplasty. They put a balloon inside the heart to open up the arteries. Emergency, we must do it right away. And Rabbi Ovadia looked at the doctor and he said, before you perform the procedure, I need to go back to my house for a couple of hours. They told him, Rebbe, you're sakana. You had a heart attack. You're not going anyplace. He said, no. I need to go home 2 hours, please give me. Then I'll come right back. You can do the procedure. They said, listen, Rabbi, we're not recommending. I know you're not recommending. I need to go home. They told him, if you're going to leave, you have to sign papers that we're not responsible. If God forbid, chas v'chalila, something happens, you die on the way, not our fault. No problem. He says, I'll sign anywhere you want me to. And he signed all the paperwork. And then they get into the car. And they go back to his house. And as Rabbi OVADIA Yosef and his son Rabbi Dovid are sitting in the back seat of the car, his son turns to him and says, Abba, I don't understand. You are so makpid on health, to listen to the doctors, to the rofim. You believe in sakana nefashot. The doctors told you it's a sakana, you belong in the hospital. Why are you leaving right now? And at that moment, the great Rabbi OVADIA Yosef began to cry. And he said, because before we left for the hospital, I was in the middle of writing a tshuva halachic responsa. There is a woman. She's what's called an aguna, which means her husband has disappeared. And nobody knows where he is. And if we don't find out what the story is, she will sit for the rest of her life. Aguna shall never be able to get married. I'm in the middle of writing a tshuva halachic responsa that says that we know because of all the circumstances, her husband is no longer alive and she's allowed to go and get married. What would happen if in the hospital they do the surgery and I die? No one will ever write this tshuva, and this woman will never be able to get married again. And he turned to his son and he said, please, give me 2 hours to finish writing and then take me back to the hospital. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. He finished writing, they took him to the hospital, he had the procedure, and Baruch Hashem, she got remarried, and he lived a long time afterwards. You could be a genius here, but you might not be a genius of Ahavas Yisrael here. Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF Zeichet Tzadik Livracha had such a burning love for Klal Yisrael. Nothing could stop him. He went around the entire country in helicopters, 3 different stadiums a night, speaking to hundreds of thousands of people to get them to do tshuva. He was already in his 70s and 80s when he did this. Did he need that? He didn't need it. But Klal Yisrael needed it. And so he did it b'simcha, with joy. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avot, Hillel Oimer, the great Hillel said, Hevi mitalmidav shel Aharon. You should be from the students of Aharon HaKohen. Ohev Shalom, you must love peace. V'rodef Shalom, you must chase after peace. Ohev et habriut, you must love your fellow Jews. Umekarvan l'Torah, and bring them close to the Torah. Says Rabbi Yeruchim Levovitz, why is it that if you love your fellow Jew, the next thing the Mishnah says is, bring them close to the Torah? And he writes the following words, Hatava hayoter na'alehi. The greatest gift that you can offer to another Jew is lekarev anashim tachat kanfei hashchina, is to bring another Jew under the wings of the Shekhinah. You want to treat your fellow Jew in a nice way. You want to give him a gift. Don't give them a new Mercedes-Benz. Don't give them a lot of gold and silver by the vort, by the l'chaim, by the wedding. Don't worry about that. That's not the greatest gift. The greatest gift that you can give to another Jew is that you bring them close to Hashem. And Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF, with all of his gaonut, all of his greatness in Torah, encyclopedic knowledge, writing and learning, day, hours after hours after hours, never sleeping, don't go to a bed, nothing, just learn and learn. He realized the greatest gift to give Klal Yisrael is to bring another Jew, no matter who they were, no matter where they were. I met a doctor from Los Angeles who was making aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. And he was moving into his apartment at the time that Rabbi OVADIA was niftar, passed away. And in his apartment, there was an Israeli Chiloni, non-religious worker. Tall, big, gigantic man with tattoos all over his arms, earrings, ponytail, no kippah. And he's busy working in the apartment. And suddenly here, coming from the streets, if anyone's ever been there in Israel before, when there's a levaya, they have a loudspeaker that's announcing, and they're announcing on the loudspeaker, Sar HaTorah, MARAN, Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF, Niftar. And the levaya is going to be at such and such a time. And this big worker, tattoos, ponytail, earring, no kippah. He says, Mazeh? And suddenly the big man breaks down, starts crying, Rabbeinu, Rabbi OVADIA, Harevi Shali, Ma kara? What happened? Because he loved every Jew. It didn't matter if you're Rosh Yeshiva, Gadol Hador, or a little child on the street who didn't know an Aleph and a Beit. Tem Yehudim, I want to give you the greatest gift of all, and that is, come and join me underneath the wings of the Shekhinah HaKadosha. I want to leave off with 2 more stories. One of them became quite famous when Rabbi OVADIA passed away. There was a fellow living in Eretz Yisrael whose name was Elisha. He was a rather young man, but he was working with immigrant Ethiopian and Russian Jews. And the younger teenagers were becoming like his talmidim, his students. And it wasn't easy. Some of them were interested, some were not interested. Some wanted to learn, some did not want to learn. They were rowdy teenagers. And he's one day sitting on a bus. And as the bus is going along, it stops at the next stop. And a Rav in a long black coat and a big black hat and a long white beard gets on, and he looks around. There's only one seat left on the bus next to Elisha. And they sit down and they begin to speak. And first they say some word on the Parsha. And then they start speaking about the Daf of Daf Yomi. And then they go into halachic ideas. And Elisha begins telling him, I'm teaching all these young boys. They don't even like to learn so much. It's very hard for me. And the old rabbi looks at him and he says, you should know, in a month's time, I will be hanging up my hat from the dayan of being on the bet din of the city that I live in. For the last 25 years, I am a dayan. And I'm going to retire at this point. And I want you to know something, young man. I didn't always look like this. And he said, many years ago, I was a young boy from a family of Holocaust survivors. My parents came from Europe. No Torah, no mitzvot, no Hashem. We lived in a small town right near a Beit HaKnesset. And every Shabbat, that was our best day to play, we would get out the kedorregel, the soccer, and we would play soccer all day long on Shabbat, right in the street, sometimes kicking our ball into the courtyard of the Beit HaKnesset. Once we even broke the window of the Beit HaKnesset on Shabbat. One Shabbat we're playing, and we see walking down the street a great prestigious rabbi. And I take the soccer ball and I give it a big kick right in the direction of the rabbi, and lo and behold, perfect shot. I hit him right in his hat and it knocked his hat off of his head. And all of us started laughing. And the hat was flat as a flying saucer. The rabbi didn't flinch. He leaned down, he picked up his hat, he put it back on his head, and I walked over, and he looked at me, and I said, Rabbi, would you like to join us for Kiddush, or Kador or soccer? And the rabbi looked at me with these sweet, soft eyes, and he said to me, where are your parents? And I looked at him very brazenly, and I said, they died. He looked at me and he said, are you hungry? Have you eaten yet today? And actually we were such a poor family, I had not eaten. Not a good meal in days. And I said, no, I haven't eaten. And Rabbi Yosef looked at me and he said, would you like to come to my house for a Shabbat meal? I said, okay, what do I have to lose? I followed the great Rabbi OVADIA Yosef to his apartment. We walk in and he introduces me to the Rabbanit. And she puts another plate on the table. And the next thing I know, she's filling up my plate with so much food. And on Rabbi OVADIA's plate, only a little bit of food. I was starving. I ate the whole plate up in a few minutes. He said, would you like more? I said, yes. And the Rabbanit served me even more. The Rabbi OVADIA was eating just a little bit, saying Divrei Torah. Later I realized they were also poor. And I ate all of his food. He wouldn't eat to make sure I had enough to eat. After the meal, he asked me, are you tired? Would you like to rest? I said, yes, I'm exhausted. said, here's a bed, please go lay down, take a nap. I slept the rest of Shabbat. Shabbat was over, we made Havdalah. I said, thank you, Rabbi, I got to go. He said, where are you going now, son? He said, I'm going to the cinema, to the movies. Rabbi OVADIA said, you have money for the movies? I said, I'll figure it out. He said, how much does it cost? He said, in those days, 1.5 lira. Rabbi OVADIA went over to his drawer and he pulled out 1.5 lira and he said, here, the show's on me. Do me a favor, come back tomorrow. I want to see you again. And I came back the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next Shabbat, and the next day. And he took such good care of me, with such ahava, such love. At a certain point I said, I can't just keep taking his food and his money for the movies. Maybe I should learn something with him. And one halacha turned into another halacha, and then it was my bar mitzvah, and then he got me tefillin. And then he taught me what it means to be a Jew. And then he got me into yeshiva. And then I started learning to become a Talmid Chacham. Then he made my shidduch. He married me under the chuppah. He married my children under the chuppah. And he was just the sandek by the brit milah of my grandson. And because of him, I became a dayan, a judge. I have a wife, I have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, going in the way of Torah the mitzvot. Because a chutzpahdik, a little kid who kicked off his hat with a soccer ball on Shabbat, was a Jew. And the greatest gift that you can give to a Jew is to bring them under the wings of the Shekhinah. And I'll end with this story. Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF lived in Harnof in Yerushalayim. In the town, quite a few years ago, there was a Sfardish Avreich. There was a young Sephardi man who was learning in Kollel. He was in Shana Rishona, the first year of his marriage. His wife, after about 3 or 4 months of marriage, one day she wasn't feeling so well. Another day she wasn't feeling so well. They went to the doctor. The doctor did a few exams. He didn't like what he saw. Sent her to a specialist. The next thing they knew, Rachmana litzlan lo aleinu, she had a machala cancer. And sadly, her life went very quickly. And within a few months, she passed away. And now this young Avreich from Kollel, he's sitting Shiva for his wife. All of his dreams, all of his hopes, all of his aspirations, a wife and children and a family, all of what he's going to accomplish together with his Eshet Chayil, gone. And he's sitting Shiva, and no one can console him. Nobody. 1 day goes by, 2 days go by, 4 or 5 days of Shiva go by, and the man is crying and crying and crying. No one can console him. So they came to Rabbi OVADIA in his apartment in Harnof, and they said, Maran, there is a Sephardi Avreich. He's sitting Shiva for his wife. Nobody can console him. We know you can. Would you please come and be Menachem Aval? Would you please pay a Shiva call? And Rabbi OVADIA said, certainly. He got up, he took his coat, he took his hat, and they went over to the house. Listen what the man did. Rabbi OVADIA walks into the Shiva house. When everybody sees the Gadol Ador, they all stand up, including the Aval, the man that's sitting Shiva stands up, and Rabbi OVADIA walks in quickly, sit. And they bring him a chair, and he pulls it right next to the man who is sitting Shiva. And he sits down. And he looks at him in his eyes. And he doesn't say a word. He breaks down. OVADIA, he breaks down, crying uncontrollable tears. Crying and crying and crying. The Avrech is crying. Everybody in the room is crying. Rabbi OVADIA is crying. And after about 10 minutes of crying, Rabbi OVADIA collects himself. And he says the famous words, Tanchumin min hashamayim. He looks at the Avrech and he walks out of the house. And this man said, nobody in the world could console me except MARAN Rabbi OVADIA. Because with his heart and with his soul, he felt my heart and my pain and my soul. This is the chizuk that we came to get tonight. The chizuk is that as much as we're involved in our learning Torah, as much as we're involved in our doing the mitzvot, as much as we're involved in our yirat shemayim, in our brachot, our tefillah, don't forget. Make sure that your heart is wide open to Klal Yisrael. Because the greatest gift that you can give to another Jew is when you bring them tachat, kanfei hashchina, under the wings of the Shechina HaKadosha. May the neshama of MARAN, Rabbi OVADIA YOSEF ben Georgia, have an aliyah. May everybody in this room that is here tonight, don't just walk away with the nice stories in your head. Make a commitment to do something greater in your avodat Hashem. Greater in your learning, greater in your tefillah, greater in your yirat shemayim, greater in your Shabbat, greater in your modesty, greater in your brachot. Something that we're going to do, because that will be the greatest aliyah, the greatest elevation of the great neshama of Rabbi OVADIA. And let's keep in mind to always keep our hearts wide open to the rest of Klal Yisrael. Because you never know, that little kid might end up becoming a dayan, a judge on a bet in Jerusalem. That boy that you speak to on a Shabbat afternoon, maybe he's going to start keeping Shabbat, marry a Jewish woman and raise Jewish children. All because you have love in your heart for every single Jew. May the neshama have an aliyah. May we all have an aliyah and a chizuk. And Bezrat Hashem, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring us the ultimate aliyot for Klal Yisrael with the bias goyal tzedek, the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mehera v'yameinu.